I'm currently 35 years old, and the narrative I'm about to share dates back to 2014 when I was 26. At that time, my ex-fiancée was 23, and I had recently completed my 4-year military service. The journey began 3 years earlier when I returned home to take a break. She worked as a horse trainer and took on odd jobs since horse training wasn't highly lucrative. We met during my days off, and despite the challenges of a long-distance relationship, we decided to give it a try. I devised a plan to support her financially. I contributed to half of her rent, making it our home base whenever I returned. It was a commitment and promise I made to her. During my military service, I played a natural role, contributing to half of her rent and sharing half of her car payments. In my traditional mindset, this was a way of expressing my commitment and love. Despite financial constraints in both our families, she had a close-knit family, which partly explained her pursuit of flexible work. As a token of appreciation for her patience and faithfulness, I bought her a $7,000 engagement ring after completing my military service. It symbolized gratitude for waiting while I served. However, things took a turn when I moved in with her after leaving the military. I began noticing peculiar behaviors, like her constant engagement with her phone and frequent visits to her parents' place. These behaviors, coupled with her regular use of the car I helped pay for, left me feeling uneasy and dependent on coworkers for rides. These issues strained our relationship, leading me to question how well I truly knew her. The person she presented during my brief visits seemed like only a fraction of her true self. Despite meeting her parents a few times, she hesitated to include me in visits to their countryside home. This, along with her extended stays at her parents' place and frequent phone use, heightened my unease. As I contemplated these concerns, it became evident that something was amiss. It seemed she either didn't care for me as much as I believed, using me, or there was another layer to her life that I wasn't aware of. The painful truth unveiled itself. She was doing both. The issue with the car exacerbated the growing problems, as I had contributed significantly to its payments, yet it was registered in her name. The situation escalated when she insisted on using the car alone, disregarding the fact that I lacked personal transportation. Reluctantly, I had to take out a car loan as she insisted, adding to the mounting evidence that our relationship wasn't as solid as I had hoped. Despite this, the decision to get a car loan brought some improvement, offering me mobility. I needed to carry on with my daily routine. On one Thanksgiving, we opted to celebrate at her parents' house, and they proved to be warm and welcoming hosts. During the gathering, I spent quality time with her 14-year-old brother. They had prepared a room for us, marking the first instance of an extended stay with her family. The Thanksgiving event went smoothly, fostering positivity in our relationship. However, I couldn't help but wonder why she wasn't inclined to invite me to her family gatherings more frequently. That evening, after arriving at her parents' house, I found myself in the room we were sharing, her childhood room. Despite the overall positive atmosphere, little did I anticipate that this night would unravel more about our relationship. As the night progressed and I started to wonder when she would join me in bed, curiosity led me downstairs. To my surprise, I encountered a man I had never met before, nearly our age, engaged in conversation with my fiancée, her younger sister, and her youngest brother. She introduced him as Jake, someone she had never mentioned before. Strangely, she referred to him as like family. Upon joining them, I sensed my fiancée's unease, and she abruptly suggested we return upstairs, cutting off the conversation. This sudden change left me with a lingering feeling that something wasn't quite right. Once back upstairs, my unease persisted, prompting me to ask her about Jake's identity. She hesitated, claiming he was her cousin, but her body language betrayed discomfort, indicating she wanted to avoid the topic. This situation left me with more questions than answers, deepening the sense of unease in our relationship. The following morning, while on a walk with her younger brother, my suspicions lingered. Wanting to confirm if Jake was indeed their cousin, I decided to dig deeper. I asked him about the guy, and to my surprise, he shook his head, revealing that the guy used to date my fiance back in high school. Utilizing her brother's inquisitiveness, I probed for more details. He disclosed that the guy had cheated on her, choosing to start dating someone else while still in a relationship with my fiance. Over the past 3 years, he faced additional challenges, losing his job and breaking up with his new girlfriend, which led him to move back to his parents' house. The revelation presented a contrasting image of my fiance's past, shedding light on her discomfort from the previous night. It was a moment of realization that the person she introduced as a cousin was, in fact, an ex-boyfriend with a complicated history. This discovery left me grappling with the newfound knowledge and questioning the honesty in our relationship. Things started to make sense, and I began understanding why my fiancée frequently visited her parents. Upon questioning her younger brother about her visits, he disclosed that she went almost every week. However, he added that she never slept at her parents' house. Instead, she either stayed at a friend's place or returned home the same day. Knowing her usual habit of spending 2 nights when she traveled, it became evident that she was staying over at her so-called cousin's house. After this conversation, I felt upset but tried not to show it. The realization that she might be cheating lingered in my mind. Not wanting to confront her too soon and fearing she might come up with excuses, I decided to gather more information by taking a drastic step, installing a GPS tracker in her car. This way, I could find out where she went the next time she visited her parents. Fast forward to the week of Christmas, where I told her a white lie about spending the holiday with my family. Instead, I watched her movements on the GPS tracker. That evening, she drove to her parents' place and later headed to an unfamiliar location, parking there. The dots were connecting, and the suspicion I harbored seemed to be turning into a harsh reality. I followed her to the unfamiliar location where she had parked, and, to my surprise, it was on the street where her ex-boyfriend lived. Coincidentally, a Christmas party was in full swing, and many cars, including hers, were parked outside. Despite my hesitations, I took a risk and decided to invite myself to the party. Upon entering the house, I found myself surrounded by unfamiliar faces, but the pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place. I successfully assimilated into the crowd when suddenly my fiancée and her ex-boyfriend emerged, appearing as a couple with matching Christmas sweaters. His arm was around her shoulders and her hand rested across his waist. The sight overwhelmed me, and in a moment of frustration, I confronted her about their relationship status. I questioned whether he was still her cousin ex-boyfriend or if they had rekindled their romance. Caught off guard, she struggled for words, insisting it wasn't what it seemed. As my frustration grew, some guys tried to calm me down, but I vehemently rejected their attempts. The revelation and the image of her with her ex-boyfriend left me grappling with a whirlwind of emotions and the painful realization that our relationship was a facade. In the midst of the chaotic Christmas party scene, I publicly announced that she was my fiancée, but now my ex-fiancée. She felt visibly embarrassed and sought refuge inside the house. Despite efforts from others to remove me, I continued causing a scene, hurling hurtful words at her and using derogatory terms. Humiliated, she retreated inside, beyond my reach. In frustration, I shouted for her to return my ring. As tensions escalated, threats involving the police were made, prompting me to leave for my car. During the drive home, I attempted to call her, but she refused to answer. Upon arriving home, she sent multiple text messages denying the affair, but expressing her willingness to break up. She accused me of humiliating her and denied any wrongdoing. In response, I demanded the return of the engagement ring via text. Shockingly, she admitted to having an affair but refused to return the ring, claiming it was a gift when she accepted it, and she felt no obligation to give it back. This revelation horrified me, realizing our relationship's foundation was built on deception, and the symbol of our commitment had become a contentious point of dispute. Firm in my decision, I told her not to expect entry to the apartment for her belongings unless she returned the ring. Despite her threats to involve the police, I urged her to proceed. Returning home, I promptly changed the apartment locks. However, on January 2nd, after celebrating New Year's at my parents' house, I discovered she had forcefully broken into my apartment, with assistance likely from her so called cousin. This violation left me feeling humiliated and betrayed, despite my efforts for her. Despite my anger, I refrained from sending threatening messages, keeping my emotions hidden. The lack of surveillance cameras left me unable to identify those who assisted her, but my resolve remained strong. I suspected that someone had assisted in taking away the two items I considered most valuable to her: the Ford F-150 truck that I had helped pay off and the $7,000 engagement ring I had bought. The incident intensified the feelings of violation and disillusionment in the aftermath of our tumultuous breakup. Consumed by a desire for revenge, I reached out to a military buddy I had served with who owned a junkyard. Sharing my situation, I outlined my plan to have her car towed, disassembled, and its parts sold. Surprisingly, he agreed to help, and I devised a plan. Approaching my boss, I requested a shift change to night hours, despite usually working during the day. Fortunately, he agreed. While I was at work, my military buddy used the GPS tracker still on her car to locate it at her so-called cousin's house. To conceal his tow truck, he stripped it down, removed its license plate, and once in his possession, it took less than hours to dismantle and extract all its parts, reducing it to a heap of crushed metal. Meanwhile, my ex-fiancée was left bewildered when she couldn't find her car. Desperate, she began to beg me, claiming she knew it was my doing. In a surprising turn, she offered to return the engagement ring in exchange for information about the car's whereabouts. The revenge plan unfolded, leaving me torn between the satisfaction of payback and the realization of the lengths I had gone to in seeking retribution. Despite her persistent messages, I remained silent and didn't respond. In desperation, she took the matter to the police, filing a report accusing me of stealing her car. The police contacted me, but I had a solid alibi. I was at work during the alleged incident. They cleared me of any wrongdoing. Even after the police cleared me, she continued to plead with me, attempting to coax an admission of guilt in exchange for returning the engagement ring. I chose not to engage with her. The absence of her car eventually cost her job, as she couldn't make it to work without it. Aware that I tracked her activity on Facebook, where she posted a public message portraying me as a vengeful person who had allegedly stolen her car. In her post, she concocted outrageous falsehoods, accusing me of being abusive and falsely claiming I had assaulted her. Despite these baseless accusations, I chose to maintain my silence, refusing to be drawn into the web of drama and false allegations she was creating. The situation had become entangled in a web of deception, but I remained resolute in my decision not to respond to her unfounded claims. Eventually, she changed her relationship status back to her ex-boyfriend, and I received a notification on my phone. It seemed like an ill-considered move on her part, especially since they broke up again just 6 months later. If she had been loyal, perhaps we could have moved forward and eventually married. However, life took its course and I crossed paths with another woman. We connected, got married, and this time I didn't invest in an expensive ring. I made it clear to her that if she prioritized showcasing the ring over our relationship, she could exit. Fortunately, she understood my perspective, and we built our relationship on trust and understanding. Regarding the car revenge plan, after my military buddy sold the car for parts, I ended up with about $5,000, while he kept the rest. It wasn't the same as the hard-earned $7,000 I had spent on the engagement ring, but I learned to accept the outcome. Life moved on, and I found happiness in a new relationship built on genuine connection and mutual respect.